Now, the Black Management Forum has welcomed the BRICS expansion. It says the inclusion of other countries will strengthen the bloc in the global politics. With South Africa in need of energy solutions, investment from China can be seen as a catalyst for global growth and development. Let's now bring in the President, Sibongile Vilakazi, for more on this. Doc, thank you very much for joining us in a studio this afternoon. A very interesting developments at BRICS last week. We were expecting some kind of expansion to come into play, but many saying they didn't expect 6 new countries to be added on, let alone the ones that we saw. Your initial thoughts of the 3 days that we saw and ultimately the BRICS Plus that's now happened with the addition of the 6 members?
Thank you so much for having us as BMF. We are really proud of how things have turned out for the country. Firstly, from the execution of the summit itself. We think that South Africa really showed itself up again as a brilliant host to global events. I mean, similar to what we did during the World Cup, the Soccer World Cup. So we did a great job. It was quite great to see our president being so presidential.
Yes.
You know, and taking charge in all the conversations that were happening. So we really are quite supportive as BMF to say that we've done well in the summit. And of course then the results of the summit are quite good for transformations, which is something that we stand for as an organization. For years now we've been agitating for a new world order, at least in South Africa, to see corporate South Africa transforming to represent the majority of the population and to be inclusive, at least the economy to be inclusive. So this is an inspiration that it can be done. Things are no longer the same. The world is shifting. Geopolitics are shifting. The expansion of all the additional countries, it's quite good for trade, for the country, so for transformation. So we're quite happy.
Yeah, I mean, you were right. You know, the president did carry himself like the chairman of the bloc, as he should have, as the outgoing chair indeed. And it is an indication of the new world order in that we're creating a global south that will no longer have to rely on the developed nations for any kind of assistance. But what would you say about the argument that a lot of these new entrants have a lot of political differences, whether it be human rights violations or anything else that perhaps South Africa would not subscribe to?
Well, it's good. I mean, there could be some cross-pollination as well of ideas, of cultural norms, adopting certain things that may work well in some spaces and they may not work so well in other spaces. So we are finding each other, and I think that the value that South Africa will bring is exactly that, assisting these countries to understand how to manage that diversity. I mean, we've seen it in our own country.
Yeah.
We've struggled with diversity, but we've come a long way. Compared to many countries that are more homogeneous, we have a lot to teach the world on how to manage diversity. So it's something that South Africa, I think, should take serious as we come on board in this alliance, because it's a value that we can really add, and we can teach and show how that diversity can be managed.
Apart from teaching the role around diversity, a democratic practice and the like, how does South Africa benefit economically more than it has with the current grouping, the 5 that it has? Because we do know that between the 5 countries at the moment, trade between them is about 6%, and South Africa is one of the biggest importers to the biggest trading partner, which is China. How does South Africa become more intentional in its position within the BRICS bloc, and really how do we create an environment that says we are manufacturing exportable goods that the BRICS bloc and the rest of the world really should be buying?
Yeah, I think we need to be intentional. We need to start having these conversations internally. Our role, and also the manufacturing space, what role do we want to be playing from an agricultural perspective, what role do we want to be playing? So we do need to be intentional. We have to understand what the value that we bring, our resources, natural resources that we are bringing, and negotiate from that position, you know, and expand the market penetration into these countries. So we have to be intentional about it.
Yeah. What kind of conversations should we then be having about things like the visa regime, with the opening up of the markets and the collaborations with different countries? Surely there needs to be more aggressive conversations around sore points like the visa regime.
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, the Africa Free Trade Agreement, I think, may just assist also from that perspective.
Yeah.
Because we do need to start making it easier for us to have access to the rest of the continent and then to the rest of the BRICS countries as well. So we must have those conversations and be adamant about opening up the spaces.
Two other developments which I thought were great when it comes to the advancement of different groups within the BRICS bloc and beyond were the Women's Alliance that was established, but also the Youth Council, which will fall under the BRICS Business Council. Those, one would say, were long overdue, but they're there now. But what role do you think that they will be able to then play when it comes to the contribution on the bigger trading bloc?
The voice is quite critical. So the fact that that voice is being recognized as a critical voice in trade, it's quite a positive outcome. And I hope that our young people will take advantage of that space that has been created for them. For women in particular, I mean, we've been crying for even like 40% access for ourselves in this country. So it's an opportunity for us to really use that space and that voice and make sure that we are heard more than we've been heard. And we create those opportunities for women and young people.
Going forward, your thoughts, probably there's going to be a further expansion. There's also talk of trading in our local currencies. Are you confident that there will be that creation of the Global South that will form an alternative powerhouse to the world and really steer economic growth for developing nations by developing nations and not necessarily taking the cue from the developed world?
Yeah, I think it's a start, and it's a very symbolic start. Obviously, it will take its time, and we'll start seeing all of the teething issues and challenges that come with decisions like this. But I think the opportunity for South Africa is that we shouldn't be sleeping on the job now. We really need to take these opportunities seriously and drive the economic inclusion that we need for ourselves first, but also the growth that we're so desperately looking for as a country.
Yeah. Do you think there's political will? We've run out of time, so it has to be yes or no.
Yes, there is political will.
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you so much for joining us in studio, Doc. That is the president of the Black Management Forum joining us in studio.